Hey, Robert.
That's better. That's a little better. It froze a minute ago.
Yeah, I know, but that's fine. We're good, and the lighting looks good on you. You got a new desk lamp, so we can see you. That's awesome.
Thank you. I had it on my to-do list, and I just never got around to it until you brought it up.
All right, hey, I'm a taskmaster. What about Eric? How are you, Eric?
Eric said, "I'm great, Mom. A little solemn today. Why is that?"
Yeah, why?
He said, "I spent a lot of energy this weekend."
Oh,
Oh, okay.
yeah.
So why would that make you solemn? Because he said people had a lot of sadness.
Oh, so it was the Denver Channeling Eric event. How do you think that went, Eric? Apparently, people were just amazed, and
He said it was fantastic.
that's good.
He said I was going around pulling all that sadness away from them.
Hmm.
That's why everybody felt so elated afterwards.
So you took it upon your own shoulders. That's not good.
He said, "Well, it's not really like I took it on." He said, "It's just, think of it like cleaning the house. You get tired after you clean the house."
I know. I know. Mine is like I just lower my standards on my house. That's it. Takes
Well,
care of a lot of shit.
I just don't let anybody come over.
I just hide it all. It's like my house looks pretty good, except when you open drawers, like there's like old, probably, you know, gummy bears with fuzz all over them, and just random pennies and stuff. Whatever. But it's okay.
Mine looks good until you walk through the front door.
Uh-oh, that's not good. All right, well, I just have two subjects. The first is pretty quick. We have a lot of blog members who are from the UK. And Eric, I just want to know your take on the Brexit. The British, the UK voting to leave the European Union.
He said, "Mom, I'm just full of opinions. You know that."
I know.
We'll talk a little slower because he's like talking really, really fast.
Uh-oh, rein it in. Rein
He's
it
like,
in, Eric.
oh. He said it's about people trying to take back their power. Like if they feel like they weren't in control of that whole scenario, then they're trying to take some of that back and say, "Well, look, no, wait, let us decide what we want to do." He said that the initial vote is really about a rebellion against that, against being told what they need to do and feeling like they're losing their individuality. And so people are trying to take some of that back.
Well, it is kind of weird that just people in Brussels who are not elected are making decisions for them. Things like how many refugees get to come into the country and things like that. So
Yeah.
I can kind of understand that.
Yeah. I mean, he says ultimately it's about that. It's about them reasserting their individuality, their sense of autonomy. But it doesn't mean that like a union of things is a bad thing, he said. It's just you have to remember that it's the individuals and stuff that will create a strong union, not like people that are over you that are then kind of telling everyone else what to do.
So do you think, all in all, Eric, Brexit is a good thing, or you think it's a mistake?
There has to be a consensus, he said. No, he said it's not a mistake. He says what it will do in the long run is he said whether the union falls apart or not, it will be like a piece that kind of like, It's like it will, whenever we create unions and stuff, it will just be like something that will teach us to evolve in a way that makes sure that we can have the individuals involved with it. There's like other people here, so it's like distracting me, and I can't like think of what I'm supposed to say.
All right, everybody, pick a number.
I know there's like several people around here, and it's like they're looking over my shoulder. So then it's like making me like I can't get my words
You're
out.
just a bunch of nosy people. You should sell tickets.
For sure.
You can make a little
But I don't think that really made
some change.
I don't think that made much sense what I was trying to say. But
No, it did. It did. Do you think others countries will leave the union too, Eric?
He said that what's going to happen is it's like this is part of a shakeup. It's like it's meant to wake up that union to say, look, there are people who want to have a say. It's about consensus. It's not about someone dictating things.
I know.
So people are pushing against that. So he says in the long term, it could end up making the union stronger. Or if the union dissolves, whatever the next one is will be stronger for this. That's what I was trying to say.
Okay.
Wow.
That totally makes sense. So do you think there will be other countries leaving the EU?
He said there'll be other countries that will start to do similar things to Britain, where there'll be like rumblings. Like people will be saying, we'll be pushing against it, right? Erik says the same thing happened here in the States. Like when we first formed and stuff, there was a fight back against what we thought was being ruled by someone else. And then later on, we had our struggles, and we had to sit there and constantly manipulate or like chisel away at like how we want to do things as individuals. And Erik says that that same thing is going on right now in the United States, and it's a constant battle of chiseling away at what you want, right? Because there's always this little bit of a push and pull between like the small number of people who want to be more, like he said, they're like the control freaks. They don't feel like they ever have any power, and there's a small number of them that like to get over everyone else and then tell everyone else what to do. It makes them feel better about themselves. But the majority of people, he says, they more of live and let live. They want, but if they get pushed far enough, which he says is what's happening globally, then they start pushing back against that small group. And ultimately, human beings are evolving to a place where it's more of a collective thing. Hierarchies will become more, not about like who's in control and who's not. It'll be more like if someone is considered in a place of power, it won't be looked at it like that. It'll be looked like more of like you're a guide or you're a teacher or something, right? Right now, it's more like you're you're like the sergeant, or you're like the the guy that gives the orders, right?
Yeah.
It won't be like that. It'll be more of like they're just there for guides, and they're there to help whatever the consensus is of the population to make sure that those things happen in a way that doesn't create suffering for other people or for themselves, right?
Yeah. Well, did some of this start in the U.S. with the populism movement of Trump and Sanders? Did that have any influence on the Brexit vote?
He said no.
Okay.
No, he said that there's been things going on in other countries. Britain is just the one that we're hearing about.
Okay.
Where people are feeling like they're being pushed and pushed and pushed, and more is being taken away. He said that's not just unique to the United States, but he says it's not like, he says, and so it's basically like they're just reasserting their power again. When people feel like that stuff's starting to happen, they start to say something about it and want to change it.
Well, now Scotland, they voted to remain in the EU. I mean, with the UK, thus the EU. But now the UK is out of the EU, so they want another referendum vote. I don't know whether it's because they want to declare independence from the UK and go back to the EU, or whether they just want to be independent and outside of the EU. But talk to me about that.
Erik said politics is all just that. It's just he said it's like a bunch of kids in a sandbox, and they're all fighting over who gets the shovel and the bucket and all that kind of stuff, right? He said all that's just going to go away.
Well, what's best for Scotland?
He said, Mama, I don't really care.
But what's best for Scotland?
He said what's best for any country, though, is to speak up for what the hell they want.
Okay.
Right?
I think that's a good thing, to have a voice.
That's what a lot of countries are doing.
Now, there's one thing that people say, that the older population in the UK, they think is, xenophobic, and it's all upset about the immigration of Syrian refugees and other Muslims, and and so on, and that the younger population is more tolerant. I hate the word tolerant, but more accepting
Yeah.
But the younger people didn't show up to vote because it was raining outside, and these young people don't like to get out in the rain. So, what about that?
Eric says, Mom, when it comes to generations, older generations have experienced and seen things that ingrained within them a certain way of being, right? Mm. So a lot of people who were in their, 60s and 70s and 80s, some of them lived through different wars and things.
Well, that's true.
And at the same time, there was a lot of propaganda that went on at the time to make sure that war continued, right? Yeah. Part of it was for that, but part of it was also about that whole, like, us against them kind of thing. So then, even though wars have not gone on for quite a while in those countries, those people were immersed in that for quite a while, during a time period where they're, where that's what everyone was thinking, right? So it was kind of like a weird thing. And so that just perpetuates for them. And whenever something comes up for them that reminds them of that, and then they go back into that place of fear. Yeah. And then they want to make sure that doesn't happen again. Yeah. Except Poppy did that all the time, Yeah. He would bring up things that had happened when he was coming around, and he was concerned that was going to happen again.
Who?
Poppy.
Oh, my father. Okay, right.
Yeah. And
he who shall not be named.
Eric said he's here, by the way.
He makes Voldemort look good. Oh, we won't even talk about that. But anywho,
he was one of the ones that was looking over my shoulder and was feeling. Oh. I wasn't sure at the time, but now I know it was him.
Okay.
And he said, as far as young people not getting out to vote, he said that historically is what's always gone on, Mom. He said that's no secret. And young people, they're not motivated to because they haven't experienced a lot of things that would make them want to be motivated.
Exactly. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But a lot of people are so afraid that there'll be like millions of, Syrian refugees coming in. It'll fundamentally change their culture, and that, there'll be a huge voting bloc that might vote for. Now, this is not my opinion, okay?
Right, but Erik
said might vote in Sharia law and things like that. I mean, there's a lot of fear surrounding this Brexit.
Right, that's what Erik was saying. Is that's what fear does. It makes people do things that sometimes are not in their best interest, but in other times it is in their interest. Yeah. Erik says that you just never know how it's going to be until it's played out.
Well, is it safe for all these Syrian refugees to come into these European countries?
Erik said it really is, because Erik said here's the thing that when it comes to all of that.
I mean, because ISIS says that they're going to use the influx of refugees to like a Trojan horse.
Right, but Erik says that can also be a mind fuck with people, right?
Yeah.
Erik says it's possible for sure, but Erik says here's the thing though that creates a lot of these kinds of scenarios that we're talking about. So someone tells people to be afraid of something, and they maybe because they genuinely, the person that said it is afraid, right? Yeah. Maybe they have information that makes them believe that that's what's going to happen, but they're getting that information from a certain little group, right? And that little group, their intention is to create more fear, right?
Yeah.
Because fear will pull people apart. So he said, so then we start applying those fears that we have to like a whole group of people. It could be anybody. It used to be the Indians. It used to be Italians when there was all these separations of ethnicities in the United States.
Sure, and the Irish and all that, yeah.
Yeah, it's just anybody.
Yeah.
And then what happens is we start treating those people in a certain way, and we start looking at them with suspicion. And then those people then start reacting in a defensive way.
Yeah.
Right? And then we say, well, that justifies why we don't like them.
Yeah.
Right? And then it creates all this separation between us. Mm-hmm. Erik says that's typically how humans have behaved, but he said a lot of humans are just naturally are starting to evolve beyond that. And so they're starting to project the opposite of that when they are treated with suspicion. If they're approached with hostility, they will give the opposite of that. More and more people are doing that. So it's becoming harder and harder for the collective humanity to be manipulated by the fear.
Yeah.
It's still there, and it will always be there because there'll always be a certain segment of the population that is in tune with that, because everything Erik says is about balance. You can't just have what humans would label as all good and all bad and all love and no fear. there's always going to be all those things interspersed in it.
Well, there have
That
been,
history,
yeah,
things will skew back and forth.
yeah. But there's a lot of people, not me, I mean, this is not my opinion, okay?
Yeah.
Don't be haters, people, but that see that certain cultures, like the Muslims, don't assimilate in their new country. They stay isolated, and I don't know that that's a good thing. It would be nice if we just all assimilated and were brothers and sisters together.
Yeah,
So they're concerned about that too.
Yeah, Eric says this goes back to what we just talked about at the beginning with Brexit.
Yeah.
The UK was wanting to assert their individuality, right? Seems to be nothing wrong with that, right?
But the Muslims can't exert theirs.
Right. And Eric says, and because of the things that historically have happened with the Muslim faith and with that culture, and because of a certain population that's associated with it, we then lump them all into a certain category of, because they're not all integrated and blah, 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 then we start getting suspicious of them when not everybody is the same way.
But there's also the other side is why don't they want to assimilate? Are they suspicious of us? I don't think there should be any problem maintaining individualism and assimilating in the culture of the country that you are a part of.
Yeah. Eric says, somebody else is talking. I can't make out what they're saying because there's like multiple people talking now. Eric said that...
Must be a bunch of Italians talking over each other.
No, it was somebody that felt like they were like aware of like religion and all this stuff. But
okay.
Anyway, Eric says every culture and so Eric says that, let's look at the Muslim faith in particular since we're talking about it. Okay. You can think of it like it's its own culture, right?
Yeah, sure.
So a lot of this whole of not assimilating is partially because they want to maintain their culture. And part of it is a lot of society doesn't embrace some of the rituals that they may have.
Yeah.
So then they feel like they have to keep themselves over this way.
That's too bad.
Eric said, and sometimes Eric says, not just with Muslims, but it could be anything, really.
Oh, yeah. I see it in the Hispanic culture here, too. I mean, I see a lot of cultures just to, not wanting to mix with other cultures. And it's sad because we're all one. We're all part of a collective.
Right. Well, Eric says, that the best way for people to start to integrate and stuff is to appreciate what they do culturally and individually. Mm-hmm. And then to not see those things as something to judge them by or to critique them by, and just see them as human beings. And get back in touch with just approaching everybody from a human perspective and realizing that we're all emotional beings and we all have the same core needs and those kinds of things. And that's the thing that when it comes to assimilation will slowly over time allow that kind of stuff to happen and people won't feel like they need to separate off. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else you want to share on Brexit? Because in our next session, people... Not in this YouTube, but soon we're going to interview Omar Mateen. Almost forgot his name. So, anything else you want to add to this whole Brexit deal?
Eric said, "I'm fine, Mom. I'm good." He said, "Was that good?"
Yeah, but so you think all in all, it's a good thing? I don't know this is a good or bad, but
He said it's beneficial.
Okay. Sounds good. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. Love you, sweetie.
He's like, one.
I know, he always does that. Okay. Talk to you in a few.
Bye.
Bye.